Our next speaker, I first read about in Museum Pale magazine, one of the leading Benelux museum magazines there is, I believe. We had a great conversation on the phone, and at first, even though she wanted to do it, she was a bit doubtful about her agenda, but in the end, she called me back and said she really wanted to do it because I guess the passion really took over, and she's really passionate in speaking about the things she's going to speak about today, which is using AI to work with heritage, solving actual museum puzzles, and of course dealing with the dilemmas that all these new technologies like AI have her face. So without further ado, and for real this time, please a very loud applause for Heleen Wilbrink.
Thank you, yes, the one and only Heleen. I'm honored to be here today. It's a pleasure to talk to you about AI and heritage, especially museums and archives in this wonderful place. Could I have the first slide, please? Or that works with the beeper. Thank you. Yeah, of course, I also tried AI to come up with the starting slide, which took me quite some prompts this time to find something that I liked enough. And I did it with Gemini tools. So I'm a project lead at Q42, where I work for the Rijksmuseum and other cultural customers. But I also bring other perspectives in this presentation. I also used to be a program manager for 3 years at the Utrecht Archives, where we worked on implementing AI to make the archive more accessible. And I also have my own company called Ancient, where I also do digital heritage projects, often involving AI. Today we're looking at the future, but the examples I will be presenting to you look to the recent past. But I hope that they will be also inspiration for what lies ahead and for the future. And I thought it was really interesting, and I was lucky that I was not presenting before Frederick, as was announced today, and which gave my heart a bit of a scare. But to see also the presentation of Frederick and his nice quadrant, and I realized the projects that I'm going to present, they are in the lower half of the quadrant. So where can you automate tasks and also give superpower to humans? And I'm glad that he said that was the right way to start. So let's get started also with this presentation. AI has been used already for several years in the heritage sector, and these are themes that you often see. And some of these themes we also see in the examples that I will be giving. For example, text recognition, information extraction, visual search, and mainly also search and discoverability. And let's get started with the Rijksmuseum. And I want to talk to you about the Art Explorer. And this is the first kind of AI launch of the museum to integrate in their collection search. Just before I joined the team, at the end of 2024, the new collection online was launched, and part of it was the AI search. And I'll show you how it works in a couple of seconds. First, I also want to show you, if you want to try it out yourself, this is where to go. Look for Art Explorer on the website of the Rijksmuseum. And the model that we use here is the open source CLIP model. And how it works is that it's a text box, so we're using natural language so that users can indicate what they're interested in. In this case, what do you love? And I'm an Egyptologist, trained as an Egyptologist. I always experiment with Egyptian examples. So I typed in ancient Egypt, and I'm very happy to discover that there is a nice historic photographic collection within the Rijksmuseum with lots of pharaohs and goddesses. So this is then another way, other than already the collection online, with the text search and linked open data to explore the collection. And what I think is also a really nice touch that was added, with these results you also can create your own gallery of honor. So normally if you go to the Rijksmuseum, you have the Vermeer and the Rembrandt and the Night Watch, but here you can redecorate it yourself with the works that you love. A couple of months ago, we went a step further because Rijksmuseum was really happy with the results and also saw opportunities to add visual search for exploring the collection. And this is already a bit more integrated also into the collection search. So how it works is, here you see the search bar. This is the normal collection search. If I type in Rembrandt, I get all these results. And if I go to the upper right corner of one of the objects and go to the plus and I search, click on search visually, it starts the visual search, where you can see that it gives quite impressive, I think, results based on the entire image of the object of art that I chose. For this, we're using another model, again, open source, and it's called Dino version 3. And what I thought was also really interesting of this process, that we tested different models and see which one was best, but it also was on different dimensions that the models were best. So, by the way, if you scroll down, you would see many more results. And another example shows also what we think is really good about the Dino model, because it doesn't only look at painting or jewelry in this case, but also what is depicted. So here it sees the rooster, and it gives results also from really different materials, and we were very happy about that. And the museum is very happy about the implementation, also the users, and now we're looking ahead. What the next step will be, still with the question mark, but we're looking into, can we not only make it an option for the entire image, but also for segments of your interest as a user within the image. So we're experimenting. We just did a jump start to test the concept, to see if we can segment it correctly and let the user, for example, on this painting, select a jar and then see that the actual jar is also in the collection. This was based, so we just finished a jump start and we're really excited about hopefully implementing this. And I also would like to mention, if you want to know more about the work done by that, you can see the blog post of my colleague Sebastian, who did about 1 year ago his master thesis at our company Q42, and wrote a blog about it, and that's now also the basis of how we would like to proceed. Let's jump to another example that we're actually working on. This is really fresh. We started last week. Also cultural and AI, and that's a project about using AI for genre classification at the RKD. That's the Netherlands Institute for Art History. And they came to us with the question, we have all these 19th century exhibition catalogs, they are scanned, and for a long time we have been, as humans, annotating them and writing down what painters are listed here and their very brief descriptions of their paintings that were exhibited, and they would like to automate that process. And they already started 1 year ago with using AI for the transcriptions and seeing if they could extract valuable information. And we also helped them with the AI workshop to give advice on their pipeline. And they were very happy about that, and they wanted to take it one step further now with adding new information. And that is then, what kind of genre is this? For example, a portrait or a landscape. And that goes already quite well in the first week, so the first results. And probably we're going also to narrow that down with adding more information, more specific information about that. But more to follow soon. Now I would like to go to my experience as a program manager at the Utrecht Archives, and a little bit of background information. That's a Dutch archive with a huge collection of the area of Utrecht, but also of the entire Netherlands on some topics. And the collection goes back to 1,000 years before. So we have lots of old, very difficult to read handwritings. And it's quite digitized, or about 20% is already available on scan. But then it's still, as a user, very difficult to find exactly what you're looking for. So we have human metadata created by specialists and by volunteers over the year, but we really want to upscale that and make as much as possible also full text available to our users. So we were very happy that there was a big kind of revolution in handwritten text recognition over the last 5 years, I would say, with Transcribus being the main specialized platform. And that also works on these very difficult to read 17th century handwritings, or French letters that we have from the 18th century, or many different kinds of material. I would say any handwriting. So here, quickly to show how it works. First, you have the layout identification. Where is the text written? Where are the lines? And then you have, by the AI model, the transcription, which is at a quite high level of accuracy. At that time, we used the Demeter 1 model, which was the best. That was around 1-2 years ago, the best model there was. And now there is already a new generation that you can use. And I think what's also really interesting is that this is a specialized platform with many models. But also the generative AI of, for example, Gemini is used often, and it's also quite good for a lot of use cases, especially a little bit more recent material. I also tried it out on this. It really started hallucinating. Maybe it will get there in 1 or 2 years, I don't know, but you can use both options. And for us, it was really interesting at the archive to see now that we were moving behind the curtains towards already 1 million scans being full text available, on how to present that also to the users. And ideally, we would like to make it available on the website of the archive, but that was technically not ready for that. So we had to look at an alternative. And I think maybe that's something that you recognize if you work with innovation in an institution, that if you're at the forefront and an early adopter, then sometimes it's difficult to integrate into your own systems, and in this case, in the website. So we went for a solution where we used sites, which is also offered by Transcribus, and that can be customized for your own organization. So this is the sites of the Utrecht Archives, where you can search, see the results. Here you see the home. And we try to, as much as possible, integrate it into our own website, which is a bit older. It will also be revamped soon. So if you search for something, it looks to all the parts of information, but also in external websites. And if you click on transcriptions, it will take you to the sites where you can go further with exploring. And when we were working on this, so we had more and more full text of our collection available. And ChatGPT came around and we started experimenting. Can we also do information extraction and automate the work, the metadata that humans have been creating, and also use that for making the archive more accessible. So I have a really cool and talented developer colleague called Rick at Utrecht, or I used to have, I have to say. And this is, I think, his first test that he did with the older version of ChatGPT, where, remember the first scan that I showed you? Here, he asked for all the information that normally a human would write down, like when was it written, what is the text about, who are the main characters and in which role, and give it back as structured information, as in a JSON format. And we were really excited to see that that works really well, although also with mistakes sometimes. Because in the transcription, there can be mistakes, but also in this step. So you also have to be careful what you're doing. So in the end, he ended up with creating a very beautiful pipeline all the way from the scan to the transcription, to information extraction, to human-in-the-loop checking by volunteers, which I will talk to more about in a second, to publication online. But before we were able to do that, of course, we had to think about what we want to do. Can we do that with the material and the goal that we're thinking of? And yeah, we have to think about, is there any risk maybe involved in using these latest AI models with the sources that we're working with? I also would advise that to you, to really think about, is it okay? Are there any risks involved before you start using the tools without any considerations? So we did a risk assessment called the DPIA, and we did that with internal and external experts. And we looked specifically at the civil registry, and then the pipeline consisted of creating the transcription, doing at that time with the latest model GPT-4o, the information extraction, and checking it with the human in the loop, as is called in AI world, with our volunteers on our crowdsourcing platform. And fortunately, the assessment was positive, so we went ahead with the pilot. And the outcome is that it really speeds up the process of creating those metadata. And the pipeline is performing well, but also very importantly, our volunteers on the crowdsourcing platform still liked the AI checking task. And that was for us a question mark. We didn't expect that completely to be happening because their task is changing, but they still liked it. But what we did learn is that we have to ensure that the volunteers remain really sharp and focused. I will show you what the work of the volunteer now looks like. So here you see the original scan. This is a print screen from the crowdsourcing platform. And in the past, they would, based on the scan, give all the information that you see on the right-hand side. And now that is pre-filled with the outcome of the AI pipeline, and they're checking it. And it goes quite well, but there are some errors, and sometimes the field is missed. But fortunately, they still like the work, and we have the quality control that we need, but also be able to speed up the process. And the good news is that it's now also all available online on the website. And I think what is really interesting, what I'm showing you now is what happened after I left. So this is an institution, the Utrecht Archives, that really started experimenting with AI in an early phase. We also started working together with many other institutions, and here you see that there's really a next step. So there's this pilot called, I would translate it as down to the bottom, with 20 other archival institutions where they look at, can we automate access to the archives? Really in the kind of way of thinking of the steps that I just showed you. But here I think it's scaling up. So it's starting small. You see that you create more and more partners. Now it's really becoming a national thing, and it's really great, I think, that the Utrecht Archives is one of the leading parties in doing this. Yeah, if we're taking a step back, now we saw lots of examples, but I think what's also good to take into considerations, what are the opportunities, but also what are the disadvantages. And we heard already several of these today, for example, with the polar bear. So I think here are some listed. We saw, I think, opportunities in the previous examples, but disadvantages that I also want to mention, and these haven't changed, I think, for the last 3 years, is the bias and the ethical concerns, the intellectual property violation, which was mentioned, hallucinations, climate impact, dependency on big tech, and this is something that you really have to think about as an institution. Yeah, what is the balancing act, and how do I want to use it, and if so, how do I want to use it? Of course, you can also think about what models you use, and whether it's the big tech, or it's open source, or if it's other alternatives, and I will show a little bit more about that later. I think also as an institution, as a museum, you're probably publishing your data online, and there's a right statement. And what does it say about, is it in the public domain? Do you want your data to be trainable by others for AI models? It does have benefits, also has downsides. If you are against those big commercial companies, So what I see in the Netherlands is that some of the larger institutions are now rethinking what do we want to do with our data and under which rights. And here's an example of the National Library where they say we think it's really important that copyright is respected, and they made sure that where they knew that that was not the case, that it was misused by the big tech, that they made it more strict to protect the copyright. Some other advice, one I already gave, that is think about, can I use this model on this source? But if you want to know more about the publishing part, I would advise to check the Impulse paper about publishing cultural heritage data in the age of AI. Yeah, to get back on the topic, which model am I using? In Utrecht, we were using, as you saw, the OpenAI GPT model. But from the start, so we were on one hand very excited about all the opportunities, but we also felt a bit bad about supporting then this big tech with kind of different worldview than ours. So we were looking for alternatives, but it was quite hard. And we were very happy when I think about 2 years ago, the GPT-NL initiative started in the Netherlands, and it's becoming quite successful. They're winning now all kinds of prizes because their goal is to have an ethical Dutch AI model. And we also donated data of our institute to have training data for them to train their model on. One more example that I would like to show to you before ending this presentation is that we did an experiment of 1 week at the end of 2024 with creating a chatbot for the archive. And we wanted to see what does it do for the accessibility of our archive if you can chat with it, and how does it work technically, but also think conceptually about that. And we did it with lots of partners and experts within the field. And what I thought was really interesting, here you see some print screens of the designing part. So this was not actually built, but designed. To think about, if you look at ChatGPT, it's very boring, the text with the bullets. But the archive is a lot more richer, and you want to give a lot more also hierarchical information and make it visually attractive. So what could it be like, this interaction? And one very interesting thing for me was also realizing that users are now very used to, you ask a question, you get the answer from the AI. But we, I think, as institutions are used to offering sources to our users and let them decide for their own what the answer is. So we were thinking, okay, are we still into the offering sources business? Probably yes. Because we don't make all the conclusions ourselves. But on the other hand, the mindset of our users probably is shifting more and more, and especially if you look at the younger users. So I don't have an answer to that, but I thought that was really insightful. Here you see also some print screens of the prototype that also actually worked. So not just the designs. And that was, of course, it's not very fancy because we only had 1 week, but it was really exciting to see. So sometimes we were flabbergasted about what was already possible and how the interaction is so much easier. On the other hand, there were also some huge mistakes that you would never go live with, like having a date and by the chatbot placing it in the wrong century. So we thought, well, as an archive, that's not something that we want in production. Well, Robin already mentioned, he found me through Museumpile. It's not only about me, but there are many experts and use cases if you want to know more about AI and museums. And I also, if you're interested in this topic, advise you to look at AI for LAM, which is Libraries, Archives and Museums. And they organize every year a conference called Fantastic Futures. And if you go to YouTube, you see all the presentations of the previous conferences. But if you're interested in participating this year, you still have a couple of days left to answer their call for proposals. So that's it for me. I'm looking at Robin. I'm guessing there's no time for questions, or did I go so fast that maybe there's one? Okay. Is there a question? Yes. In this case, no. With the Utrecht Archive, it was like the final check, but it is really interesting to use also the feedback, the human feedback to improve the process. And I think it also depends a little bit on the model that you're using, if that's possible to kind of retrain it or not. Thank you. And if there are any other questions or... Oh, there is one? Is that... Yeah, okay. Very good question. I don't know if I have a good enough answer, but my team, for my colleagues, they always do the communication with the volunteers. So what really well works overall, but also in this project, is to keep them engaged by having like a monthly afternoon where they can together come to the archive with using the computers and do it together. Also giving updates by email about kind of information behind the curtains, about the sources that they're researching, communicating about finds of users that they find in the sources. And here it was addressing also the issue that you really have to stay focused, because we saw in the beginning that some of the users were thinking, oh, it looks fine, and then behind the curtains we saw that there were still errors in the results. And for us it was a little bit of a surprise, because we thought maybe this is too repetitive, but they kept on liking it. And if there are other comments or questions, I'll be here until drinks. So please come to me, and I'm also really excited to hear, hopefully, about how you're using AI or don't like it at all in your institution. Thank you.